Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are heading to Japan, specifically to the islands of Shikoku. But I want to stop you right there before you start picturing, the travel brochure version of this. If you're imagining tourists snapping photos of cherry blossoms or monks chanting...
Suspense-filled holes, that kind of thing.
Exactly. While you sip matcha in a rock garden, you need to just pause. Because the stack of research we're diving into today, specifically this fascinating paper called Reconstructing the Shikoku Pilgrimage, it completely flips the script on what this actually is.
It really does. I mean, I think the default assumption for almost everyone when they hear the word pilgrimage is that it's fundamentally a religious ritual.
Right.
You assume it's an act of intense devotion, prayer, maybe seeking forgiveness for past sins. It feels very heavy, very spiritual.
And very serious.
Yeah.
You picture people with their heads bowed, lost in deep contemplation.
Yeah.
And I assumed it was, 88 temples of deep, focused worship. But the core thesis of this research suggests something totally different. It argues the Shikoku Pilgrimage is actually a non-manipulative Buddhist life practice centered on long-distance walking.
And that phrase, non-manipulative, that is the absolute key to this entire deep dive. We are going to circle back to that a few times. The argument here is that this pilgrimage isn't really about prayer in the way we Westerners usually understand it. It's more of a culturally optimized system for living.
A system for living.
Yeah, think of it less like a church service and more like a piece of software designed for the human operating system. Software that's been bug-tested and refined over 1,200 years to fix specific crashes in our hardware.
I love that software analogy. But for that software to run, the hardware requirements are just... They're absolutely brutal because the scale of this thing is madness. We're not talking about a weekend hike to clear your head.
No, not even close. We are talking about a loop of 1,200 kilometers.
1,200 kilometers. Just to put that in perspective for everyone, that is roughly the distance from, say, London to Florence or New York to Chicago.
On foot. And to do it the traditional way, you're looking at a commitment of 45 to 60 days.
Wow. That is 2 solid months of walking.
Consistently averaging about 20 kilometers a day. Every single day. Rain, shine, mountains, pavement.
So, okay, our mission today is to figure out the why. Why this specific structure? Why does walking for 2 months straight serve as a, quoting the source here, technology for the mind and body that functions without the user even trying? Because that's the boldest claim in the research, that you don't have to try for it to work.
It's a fascinating proposition. Usually when we look at self-improvement or spiritual growth, the assumption is effort.
You have to do the work.
You have to focus, you have to study, you have to concentrate, you have to do the work. Yeah. This research suggests the opposite, that the structure does the work for you. You just have to submit to the structure.
Okay, let's unpack that structure first. The source makes a really interesting distinction about the duration. It says that the 45 to 60-day time frame, it shifts the experience away from being a retreat or a vacation.
This is so critical. Think about a typical meditation retreat. You go away for a weekend, maybe 7 days if you're, hardcore. That is a peak experience.
Right. It's a break from your life.
It's a break. You step out of your routine, you dip your toe in peace, you feel great, and then wham, you go back to the office on Monday.
And usually the stress comes flooding back by Tuesday morning, and you're wondering why you spent all that money to sit in silence.
Exactly. It's a pause button, not a reset button. But 60 days, that is not a break. The source calls it a temporary replacement of one's entire daily life structure. You aren't visiting a new life. You are moving into one.
It's long enough that the old habits actually die off. You aren't just holding your breath waiting to exhale when you get home.
The old routine. Wake up, check email, commute, work, watch Netflix, sleep. It's completely deleted. It's just gone. And it's replaced by this new, incredibly simple loop that runs the show.
The source breaks this loop down, and it is brutally simple. Walking, visiting temples, eating, resting, sleeping. That's it. There's no decision fatigue because there are no decisions.
And notice what isn't on that list.
Well, besides checking the stock market or doom scrolling through social media.
Yes, that, but more importantly for a Buddhist context, there are no mandatory mental techniques. This was the part that really surprised me. To be a proper pilgrim on this route, you don't have to learn complex visualizations. You don't have to master breath control. You aren't trying to achieve some altered state of consciousness.
That feels so counterintuitive. If it's a Buddhist practice, isn't the whole point to meditate, control the mind, and, reach enlightenment?
In many traditions, yes. But here, the structure is the practice. You don't need to add anything on top of it. You just do the loop. The walking itself is the engine.
Okay, let's dig into that engine. The Source calls walking a non-manipulative meditation. We need to define that term, non-manipulative, because it sounds a bit academic, but the concept is actually very relatable. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, to understand it, just compare it to what happens when you sit down to meditate. Classic Zazen, seated meditation. You sit on the cushion, you close your eyes, you turn inward. What happens?
Well, if you're me, or probably 90% of people listening, your brain starts making grocery lists.
Yeah.
Then you worry about an email you sent 3 years ago. Then you wonder if your knee hurts. It's a wrestling match.
Exactly. You are trying to manipulate your mind. You're saying, stop thinking, focus on the breath. You are applying will to your consciousness. And seated meditation carries risks, specifically what the Source calls excessive inward absorption or overproduction of meaning.
Overproduction of meaning. That's when you get stuck in your own head and start overanalyzing every little sensation.
Yes. You can spiral. You can even dissociate, sort of float away from reality because there is no sensory input to ground you. It's just you and your thoughts in a dark room. For someone with trauma or just a really busy modern brain, that can actually be destabilizing.
Okay, so sitting still can be a trap, especially if you're inexperienced.
Precisely. But walking forces you to stay in what the research calls the safe middle zone.
The safe middle zone. That sounds like a place I want to be.
It's the sweet spot. You have to navigate traffic. You have to watch your footing on the trail so you don't twist an ankle. You feel the rain, the wind, the sweat. You cannot dissociate because the environment demands your attention. Walking anchors the mind in the present moment naturally.
So it keeps you awake to the world.
It maintains wakefulness. You are connected to the external world, but the rhythmic nature of the walking left foot, right foot, repeat, it calms the internal world. It provides a cadence that settles the nervous system down.
And this brings us back to that term, non-manipulative.
Right. It means you don't have to control your mind. You aren't forcing a state of calm. You aren't trying to relax. On the Shikoku Pilgrimage, the physical act of walking 20 kilometers a day performs that regulation for you. You don't have to try to empty your mind. After 15 kilometers, your mind just settles down because the body is taking the lead. The system works without conscious mental control.
That is essentially a biohack. You're using the body to trick the mind into shutting up.
It's a physiological solution to a psychological problem. And it's robust. It works, whether you believe in it or not.
Now, there's another layer to this technology that the Source highlights. It moves from the physical structure to the psychological one. There's a phrase written on the sudge hats that the pilgrims wear, Dōgyō Ninin.
Ah, yes, Dōgyō Ninin. Literally translated, it means two walking together.
And the traditional story is that you are walking with Kūkai, the great Buddhist monk who founded Shingon Buddhism and is the central figure of the island. He's there with you in spirit.
That is the devotional interpretation, yes. And for many pilgrims, that connection is very real and very emotional. But our Source takes a functional, structural view of this. It asks, what does believing you are walking with an invisible companion actually do to your psychology over 60 days?
Okay, so stripped of the mysticism, what is the function? Because 60 days alone is a long time.
It is, and that's the point. It acts as an existential buffer.
An existential buffer. Break that down for us.
Well, think about walking alone for 2 months. Isolation is a double-edged sword. It's very easy to start spiraling, creating this massive narrative about yourself. Your ego can inflate. You start thinking, look at me, I'm suffering, I'm conquering this mountain, I'm the hero of this movie.
The main character energy could get completely out of hand. You start narrating your own biopic.
Exactly. You become the center of the universe. But if you are operating under the protocol of Dōgyō Ninin, if you are walking together, you are never truly the sole focus. It reduces that existential isolation so you don't feel abandoned, but it also checks the ego. You aren't the only one there. It keeps your narrative size in check.
It prevents you from becoming a legend in your own mind. However, there's a fascinating nuance here that the Source points out. This companion is a silent companion.
This is the genius of the system. Kūkai gives no instructions. He doesn't tell you to turn left or right at the fork in the road.
He doesn't carry your backpack when you're tired.
Nope. And he guarantees no results.
So he's technically the worst travel buddy ever. He's just there watching you struggle.
Or the best. Because he provides presence without intervention. The source connects this to the Buddha's teaching of Adadipa, make the self a lamp.
Self-reliance.
Yes. The dynamic creates a condition of walking alone but not bearing the entire burden alone. You have to do the walking. You have to endure the blisters. No one can do it for you. But you aren't existentially abandoned. It's a brilliant psychological safety net.
It sounds like it strikes that impossible balance between total isolation, which can be scary and destabilizing, and dependency, where you want someone else to fix your problems.
Exactly. The Buddha walks beside you, but he does not intervene. That is the crucial distinction. If he intervened, you wouldn't learn. If he wasn't there, you might crack. It keeps you right in the middle.
Speaking of the Buddha in the middle, let's zoom out to the historical context, because the source makes a pretty bold claim about the origins of this whole system. We usually associate Buddhism with, sitting under a Bodhi tree or gold statues in a temple.
Right. We think of the sedentary golden statue Buddha, the one that looks very peaceful and very still, usually indoors. But the source reminds us of the historical reality of the Buddha's lifestyle. He was an itinerant wanderer.
He was homeless, basically.
Essentially. He didn't settle permanently. He didn't build fixed temples for himself to live in. He walked continuously, moving from place to place across India, only stopping for the rainy season retreats because the roads were impassable.
So the pilgrimage isn't just visiting holy sites. It's a simulation of the Buddha's actual daily routine.
It's a simulation of the wandering life. And the source argues that walking 20 kilometers a day is the bodily implementation of the middle way.
We hear middle way a lot as a metaphor. Don't be too extreme, find balance. But how is walking 20 kilometers a day middle? That sounds like a lot to me. Most people don't walk 2 kilometers a day.
It is a lot, but you have to consider the alternatives in ancient India. On one side, you had extreme asceticism, starving yourself, self-torture, standing on one leg for days, holding your breath until you passed out. The Buddha tried all of that and said, this is useless. It just damages the body and clouds the mind.
And the other side is sensory indulgence palaces, soft beds, rich food, constant pleasure.
Right. So where is the middle? Walking 20 kilometers a day, it is sustainable discomfort.
Sustainable discomfort. I like that term. It sounds like the tagline for a very intense gym.
It fits. It's not torture. You eat, you sleep, you are safe. But it certainly isn't comfortable. It keeps you right on that edge where you cannot be complacent, but you aren't destroying yourself. It keeps the system alert, but not broken.
It's rigorous, but not destructive.
Exactly. And this brings us to Kūkai, the figure associated with Shikoku. The source clarifies a common misconception here. Kūkai didn't actually sit down with a map and design the 88 temple circuit like an urban planner.
He wasn't the architect of the tour.
No. The system was formalized long after his death. But Kūkai is the prototype. He was the one who actually lived this embodied, mountain-based asceticism. He walked these mountains. He lived in caves.
So he was the proof of concept.
Yes. And the pilgrimage, as we know it today, is a popular cultural optimization of the lifestyle he demonstrated. It's like the people looked at Kūkai and the Buddha and said, okay, we can't all be enlightened masters living in caves, but how can regular people access that state of mind?
And the answer was, walk this loop, replicate the physical conditions, and you might get a taste of the mental state.
Precisely. They operationalized enlightenment into a walking route.
That leads perfectly into why this has survived, because you'd think something this hard, this time-consuming, would just die out in the modern world where we want everything instant. But the source argues it's actually incredibly robust because of its accessibility.
This is my favorite part of the analysis. To do the Shikoku Pilgrimage, you need zero special aptitude.
I don't need a PhD in theology. I don't need to be able to recite the Heart Sutra perfectly.
You don't need deep belief. You don't need mental discipline. You just need legs.
And the source says something really provocative here. It says you can do it mindlessly and it still works.
Yes. Doing it mindlessly is valid.
That flies in the face of everything we're told about mindfulness today. We're always told, be mindful, pay attention, focus on the grape you're eating.
But think about the pressure that creates. Am I being mindful enough? Am I doing it right? Oh no, I thought about my taxes. I failed at meditation. It turns the practice into another job.
It becomes another performance metric we can fail at.
Exactly. But on the pilgrimage, no mind, or mushin, isn't a target you strive for. You don't try to have no mind. It is a state that emerges naturally from the rhythm of walking without expectation.
So if I'm walking the trail and I'm just daydreaming or complaining about my feet or thinking about a double cheeseburger, I'm still doing it right.
You are still doing it right because the physical load is still doing its job. The sun, the wind, the fatigue, the rhythm, they are working on your nervous system regardless of what your conscious mind is doing.
It resets the hardware, even if the software is glitchy.
Exactly. The source describes it as a mechanism that gently returns the human nervous system to a quieter, more natural mode of operation. It's structurally robust. It works on the saints, and it works on the sinners, it works on the focused and the distracted.
That is incredibly reassuring. It takes the pressure off spiritual achievement. It sounds like you can't really mess it up.
It removes the success-failure framing entirely. You cannot fail at walking as long as you keep taking steps. The only way to fail is to stop.
So let's try to synthesize this. We have this massive 1,200-kilometer loop. It's a convergence of the Buddha's original wandering habits,
Yeah.
Kūkai's embodied example, and centuries of trial and error optimization by the culture to make it accessible to everyone.
Yes, it's a safety-oriented practice. It prevents you from getting too lost in your head, like in meditation, or too lost in your ego, thanks to the silent companion. It keeps you in that safe middle zone.
And the big takeaway for me is this idea of the functional nature of it. It's not magic. It's not just faith. It's a physiological and psychological protocol.
It is. It's a protocol for being human in a way that we rarely get to experience anymore. It's the middle way, not as a philosophy to discuss at a dinner party, but as a physical reality you live for 2 months.
And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave our listeners with today. The source describes the pilgrimage as a temporary replacement of daily life designed to reset us.
It resets us to a baseline.
Right. So if we need to walk 20 kilometers a day for 2 months, living out of a backpack, sleeping simply, dealing with rain and blisters, just to feel reset, just to get our nervous systems back to a natural mode of operation.
It raises the uncomfortable question.
What does that imply about the toxicity or the unnaturalness of the life we are resetting from? What does it say about our sedentary, indoor, screen-filled lives if this extreme walk is the cure?
It suggests that perhaps the pilgrimage isn't the extreme thing. Perhaps our normal life, the 9 to 5, the fluorescent lights, the constant notifications, is the extreme deviation from what we are built for. The pilgrimage just feels extreme because we've forgotten what humans are actually designed to do.
Maybe we're the ones living in the odd simulation, and the pilgrims are the ones waking up. Something to think about the next time you're sitting in traffic. Thanks for diving in with us.
Keep